I'm a bad motherfucker.
That's the kind of thing you get at the Jimmy Dore show here. You get some kind of crazy good conversation, huh? Should call this the convo chair. Anyway,
Step, what other Rumble rants you got? Burger King versus McDonald's? Burger King? Who's next?
Coke versus Pepsi.
I think
Coke versus Pepsi.
First of all, broiling beats frying. We all know that.
Yeah, there you go. Broiling or frying.
When I was a kid, they used to have a promotion at Burger King. If you went into Burger King and when you ordered a Whopper and you said broiling beats frying, you got an extra Whopper.
Oh, wow.
So that was their big thing. They really wanted to cement that. And by the way, I don't know if you know, broiling does beat frying. Frying, unless you're frying in duck fat or avocado oil, which you know they're not. They're frying it in the garbage oil, which is canola oil, which is corn oil. Those things are poison. I always thought like, oh, corn oil, it's vegetable oil, so it's good.
Right.
No, the way they make that vegetable oil is they have to heat it up, put it under high pressure, and it turns all the fat inside there into poison. And that's why it's bad to eat fried stuff. Except when we go to that place I took you, they make those fries with duck fat. The place I took you to get the best steak you ever had, Russ?
They put it in duck fat?
Yeah, they cook their fries in duck fat.
That makes sense.
So look at that, huh?
That makes sense.
Huh?
No, man, duck fat.
I went to.
No, it does make sense. Duck. That's like the high end thing, right?
Yes.
I went to an upscale British restaurant with my daughter, and they had steak, and I was like, I don't even care, man. After the steak I had in LA, it's going to be a disappointment. I'm not going to order it.
Every steak is a disappointment after that steak. And I'm not telling people where I go because I don't want it filled up all the time. Now I can go in and I can get a table. All that might backfire because I didn't tell people about the Italian place I liked and then it closed. And I liked it because I could always walk in and get a table. But now I found one that I can always walk in and get a table and it's never going to close because it's inside of a hotel. Anyway, I'm not telling you what it is. But anyway, it is
Sizzler?
It is Sizzler. There you go.
Sizzler.
So here is Rachel Maddow, and she brings on Joe Biden's former self. Does he look like who was that comedian with the? Who's the comedian that has the puppet that looks like Joe Biden? Doesn't it?
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, what's the guy's name? Who does it? He's the ventriloquist guy.
Yeah.
Right? I forget his name. He's famous. He's very famous. Somebody in the channel know.
It's a sin that I don't know his name. But anyway, let's start this over.
Not Jeff Dunham?
Jeff Dunham.
Jeff Dunham, that's it. Yep.
This lady looks she looks like a Jeff Dunham doll. Doesn't she?
It does.
That's the joke I was trying to go for, and it took me 2 minutes to get to it. Sorry, I apologize. Okay, please cut this part out. Anyway, just go right to the Jeff Dunham doll. Anyway, so here they're going to talk about the First Amendment and disinformation. They say the headline here is disinformation, how disinformation erodes respect for the rule of law. Disinformation. This is coming from Rachel Maddow's MSNBC, which were the biggest disinformation disseminators when it came to Russiagate, Trump, Syria, Libya, Ukraine, and of course the grand jewel, COVID. Okay, here we go.
Do you believe the U.S. is particularly vulnerable to disinformation, or do you believe that we're kind of unexceptional?
I think your audience is. I think your audience is particularly susceptible to disinformation because they think people who are nerds and lesbians would never lie to them. Of course, that's why they hire you, because that's the ultimate head fake. They won't think gay people and nerds are liars, and that's why you guys are the biggest liars on television. There's no bigger liar on TV than Rachel Maddow. There's no bigger fearmonger. There's no bigger person who manufactures consent for war than Rachel Maddow. There's no bigger apologist for Big Pharma or liar for Big. She's a liar. There's no worse person on television than Rachel Maddow. I know that blows people's minds because she's gay.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
and it's the same. We're as susceptible to it as every other country.
Actually, Rachel, I think we're more susceptible to it than other countries. And that's because some of our greatest strengths can also be our Achilles heel. So, for example, our deep commitment to free speech in our First Amendment. It is a cherished right. It is an important right in democracy, and nobody wants to get rid of it. But it makes us vulnerable to claims that anything we try to do to regulate speech is censorship. Of course, the Supreme Court has held that all fundamental rights, even the right to free speech, can be limited as long as there is a compelling governmental interest and the restriction is narrowly tailored to achieve that interest. But I think anytime someone tries to do anything that might limit free speech, people claim censorship. I mean, just look at the...
I wonder why.
What a fuck. Oh my God.
Anytime somebody wants to censor people, they claim censorship. Isn't that weird?
It's just so weird how she would say that, because you'd think she would flip it around and say it the other way. So at least it has the veneer of making some kind of sense, where you'd think she would say, every time we try to censor disinformation, people claim that that's a violation of the First Amendment. She actually flipped it around. Every time we try to take people's speech away, they say, every time we try to take people's First Amendment rights away, they say it's censorship. That's how she framed it.
Yeah, which is exactly what it is. Okay,
right, which is exactly what it is.
Let's play the
but
rest.
She admits in the first half of it, like the premise is that we're violating the First Amendment. Well, every time we try and violate the First Amendment, they cry censorship.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they're paying lip service to the First Amendment. Of course, we all love, oh my God, we all love the First Amendment. It's like the mafia going, oh, we all love the cops and the rule of law. Come on.
Right.
Everybody likes to have safe neighborhoods. Am I right? Come on. We would never do anything. We're just in the olive oil business here. And here we go.
The Supreme Court heard today about efforts by the states of Florida and Texas to prevent social media companies from moderating content online. And they call it censorship, that they are trying to silence conservative voices. Of course, social media companies are private actors who are not bound by the First Amendment. And so we need to have a conversation and common sense solutions to these things. Instead, we throw out terms like censorship, we call each other names, we use labels, and we all retreat to our opposite sides. We need to be pragmatic and come up with real solutions. But it is, I think, one of the things that makes America particularly vulnerable to disinformation.
So the First Amendment is our Achilles heel, you guys. The First Amendment.
Amazing.
I thought that was the greatest strength of our democracy, was that we have freedom of speech and a First Amendment. But no, she's saying that makes us uniquely vulnerable, even more so than other countries, to disinformation. Again, let me remind, and there's never someone on one of these corporate-funded news shows to make the case that the biggest disseminator of misinformation is the government. Second is corporate media. Third, and a wildly distant third, are randos on social media. So if you want to get misinformed about something, watch Rachel Maddow's show. If you want to think the exact opposite of reality when it comes to Russiagate, or when it comes to the Ukraine war or the Syrian war or COVID, watch Rachel Maddow. She'll tell you the exact opposite of the truth. Go ahead. Do you fellas want to say anything? Should I play? Let me play that all again. I'm going to play this again and give everybody a running start, because this is stunning to watch the mental gymnastics that this legal expert does in trying to defend censorship and dressing it up as, again, like all dictators say when they censor, they're doing it to protect you from misinformation from our enemies. That's what they've always said. And that's what they're saying in the United States now, ever since the rise of social media. Here we go.
Do you believe the U.S. is particularly vulnerable to disinformation, or do you believe that we're kind of unexceptional and it's the same? We're as susceptible to it as every other country.
Actually, Rachel, I think we're more susceptible to it than other countries. And that's because some of our greatest strengths can also be our Achilles heel. So, for example, our deep commitment to free speech in our First Amendment. It is a cherished right. It is an important right in democracy, and nobody wants to get rid of it. But it makes us vulnerable to claims that anything we try to do to regulate speech is censorship. Of course, the Supreme Court has held that all fundamental rights, even the right to free speech, can be limited as long as there is a compelling governmental interest and the restriction is narrowly tailored to achieve that interest. But I think anytime someone tries to do anything that might limit free speech, people claim censorship. I mean, just look at the case the Supreme Court heard today about efforts by the states of Florida and Texas to prevent social media companies from moderating content online. And they call it censorship, that they are trying to silence conservative voices. Of course, social media companies are private actors who are not bound by the First Amendment. And so we need to have a conversation and common sense solutions to these things. Instead, we throw out terms like censorship, we call each other names, we use labels, and we all retreat to our opposite sides. We need to be pragmatic and come up with real solutions. But it is, I think, one of the things that makes America particularly vulnerable to disinformation.
Okay. So go ahead, Keaton. What would you like to say to that?
Well, I don't know what she's referring to with regards to Florida and Texas fighting against social media censorship. I would assume she may be talking about some campaign to counter what Biden is trying to do, which Biden is now arguing in court that the government has the right to compel social media companies to police speech on their platforms. Again, I could be wrong about that. I don't know if that was what she was referring to or not. But more broadly, whether she was or not talking about that, the private company's defense is just the most cowardly talking point, because it is a way for them to dodge the central question of, do you want censorship or not? Yes, we know that Twitter and Facebook and YouTube are not technically the public square because they are in private hands. But what we're saying is they are big enough and they are powerful enough to the point where they ought to function as the public square, because they give you far more reach and influence than any public square ever could. And therefore, they ought to function as the public square and operate under First Amendment standards. Do you agree with that? Yes or no? They don't want to say no. They don't want to. They just want to hide behind, well, they're private companies, so whatever we want is irrelevant. It's up to them. It's just a way for them to shove the onus onto somebody else. When really the answer is, we want censorship. We want to limit freedom of speech. And they are afraid to just come out and say that, although she came pretty damn close there, probably closer than anyone I've ever seen on TV. That's a pretty stunning piece of video.
Well, what they've done with free speech with the liberal class is very much the frog in the pot of boiling water. They have slowly chipped away at the idea that freedom of speech is an inviolate principle. They took the same people who lined up to see Good Night and Good Luck, right? Oh, yes, Edward R. Murrow and McCarthyism. And they managed slowly, one step at a time, to turn them into McCarthyites, to turn them into foaming at the mouth, red baiting McCarthyites that they once were so confident to judge. Liberals used to all subscribe to the principle, I may not agree with what you say, but I'll defend to the death your right to say it. And gradually, the elite commentators, the elite figures, the elite politicians that they listen to, that they admire, that they take their cues from, have gradually, slowly, very slowly made the idea that freedom of speech is a right-wing concept. That's their end game. And now they say that openly, that it's right-wingers who want freedom of speech. They've just about got them all the way there. The Julian Assange case is a flashpoint for an overall effort by, I believe, global elites to shut down democracy, to shut down the popular will. And this is why censorship is so much a part of their agenda. They have got to stop the ability of people to communicate. The internet originally benefited them. They were able to use it to foment coups and manipulate uprisings such as the Arab Spring. But eventually it turned around on them with the election of Donald Trump, with Brexit. Ever since then, they have been working to shut it down. Schellenberger wrote a really fascinating article about this, about how now you have all these intelligence operatives who thought they were going to get a job in the Hillary Clinton administration, who wound up working for these non-governmental organizations that are ultimately working for the Pentagon to manipulate the internet to suppress the popular will. That's where we are.
That is where we are. Over to Steph.
Oh, boy. Thank you, Jimmy.
I'm Josh Shakespeare.
I'm Chris Keene.
And this is pretty bad news. California homeless people were found living in caves 20 feet below street level. Apartments.com have listed the caves at $2,300 with utilities included.
After a San Francisco area school hired a company called Woke Kindergarten to train teachers, they reported some of the lowest reading scores in the state. To be fair, it's hard to teach people how to read when every word is offensive.
Hey, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there for more AM Joy.